Dr. Anirban Roy made 3 mistakes in Varanasi. The first was thinking he was different from the believers. The second was pulling a red and mysterious object from the river Ganges. And the third was assuming he could keep it. This happened in the late 90s, before smartphones could explain everything away. Back then, when something went wrong, you were just alone with it. Dr. Anirban Roy was a university lecturer, late 30s, the kind of academic who wore his skepticism like armor, rational, measured, slightly amused by the world's persistent need for meaning in meaningless things. The trip to Varanasi wasn't his idea. 3 friends had planned a spiritual tour, temples, rituals, that whole thing. Roy agreed mostly because he hadn't traveled in a while. His friends got teary-eyed at sunrise prayers. Roy wondered about crowd psychology and economic structures. They arrived on a Wednesday afternoon in October. The city hit you all at once. Incense and river water and something burning. Bells layered over bells. The constant presence of the river Ganges like a low hum underneath everything. Their hotel was small, riverside, with narrow staircases and walls that seemed to exhale moisture. Roy's room was on the first floor, facing the river. The first morning, they walked down to the riverfront, having stone steps leading into the river Ganges, where people gathered to bathe and pray. Late morning, maybe 11. The crowd was thick, pilgrims, tourists, vendors, priests. Roy's friends wanted to take a ritual dip. He went along, more curious than participatory. The river Ganges was calm that day, surface broken by offerings floating downstream, marigold garlands, incense sticks, betel leaves, the usual debris of devotion. Roy waded in waist deep. The water was warmer than expected, thick, almost textured. That's when he saw it. A red object, perfectly spherical, bobbing against the current, not drifting with it, moving against the flow, slowly, deliberately, like it had intention. Roy assumed it was painted wood, maybe rubber. Curiosity pulled him forward. He reached out and grabbed it, a coconut, husk fully removed, stained deep red with vermilion and river water. Pieces of thread clung to it, flower petals, traces of oil that left a film on his fingers. Someone nearby, an older man, said something sharp in local language. It seemed like a warning. Roy caught the tone but didn't care. He rinsed the coconut, wiped it against his towel, and laughed. It was heavier than expected. He tossed it between his hands like a ball. His friends were already heading back. Roy followed, coconut tucked under his arm, already thinking of it as a conversation piece. Evidence of symbolic excess. He brought it back to the hotel, placed it on the table in his room next to his notebook. The afternoon passed. It was a lazy day. Roy went to dinner, came back around 9:30. He smelled it immediately. Rot. Not generic spoiled smell, but something specific. Organic, wet. The kind that makes your throat close up. Like meat left in heat. He opened the window and moved toward the bedroom. That's when he saw them. Small bones, scattered across his bed. White, cleaned, some with bits of cartilage attached. Delicate. Maybe 5 or 6, arranged in no particular pattern. Roy stood there, brain trying very hard to construct a rational explanation and failing. His heartbeat pounded in his temples. Mouth went dry. He called room service. The guy came up within 3 minutes. Roy brought him into the bedroom, gestured toward the bed, started to explain. The bed was clean, perfectly made. White sheets pulled tight. No bones, no smell. Roy stared. The room service guy looked at him with that expression people get when they're trying to be polite to someone who's clearly confused. He asked if Roy needed fresh towels. Roy said no. The guy left. Roy checked everything. Under the bed, corners, bathroom, nothing. Maybe he'd been tired. Maybe the dim lighting played tricks. Maybe. He went to sleep around midnight. Tried to. At 3 a.m. he woke to the sound of small stones hitting the wall. Outside. A rhythmic tapping, like someone throwing pebbles against the exterior wall. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. Roy lay there, fully awake now, that instant alertness, when your sleeping brain registers something fundamentally wrong. He got up, pulled back the curtain carefully. Nothing. No one. There was no one in sight. The tapping continued. Roy opened the window and leaned out. No one near the hotel building, but the sound kept going. Tap, 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 even though there was no one to make it. 7 minutes. Roy counted. He called room service again. Same guy, less patient this time. Roy explained about the stones. They both stood there waiting. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. The room service guy said something polite about the room being far from the compound, about how no one could access that side of the building. He left. Roy tried to sleep. Didn't succeed. Next morning, he underplayed it, brushed it off as weird acoustics, maybe sleep paralysis. They had a full day planned. Roy went along, acted normal. But he felt off, you know. Functioning fine on the surface, but something underneath wasn't quite aligned. The day stretched long. They didn't get back until late evening. Everyone was exhausted. Roy came back to his room around 10:15. The smell hit him before he opened the door fully. Stronger now, concentrated, almost alive. He gagged, covered his nose, and pushed the door open. He moved toward the bedroom, already knowing what he'd find, but hoping he was wrong. More bones this time. Many more, scattered across the bed, the pillow, some on the floor. Small ones, but also larger pieces, something like part of a rib cage, a curved section of skull, vertebrae still connected, and scraps of what might have been fabric once, darkened with age. The smell was overwhelming, physical, pressing down on his chest. Roy didn't touch anything. He called room service, propped the door open, and waited in the hallway. Same guy, third time in 2 days. He followed Roy into the bedroom. Nothing. Clean bed, tight sheets, no bones, no fabric, no smell. The room service guy looked at Roy differently now, concerned, like he was dealing with someone having a breakdown. He offered to call a doctor. Roy said no, just needed better sleep. After he left, Roy checked everything again. The coconut was still on the table, looking completely ordinary now. Just a dried-out coconut with faded red staining. He decided he'd request a room change in the morning. At 3 a.m. the stones started again. This time Roy didn't call anyone. He lay there, listening. Finally, he got up, moved quietly to the window without turning on lights. Nothing. Empty compound. But the tapping continued, clear as anything. He stayed there for almost 15 minutes, listening to sounds that shouldn't exist. Next morning, Roy requested a room change. The manager understood. They moved him to the 3rd floor, 2 floors up at the far end. Higher up, more isolated, should be peaceful. Roy packed everything. The coconut went with everything else. The new room was smaller, but felt safer. Roy met his friends for the day's excursion, though an unexplained uneasiness sat in his chest. The excursion ended early. By 5 p.m. they were back. Roy came to his room, changed, pulled all the curtains closed, and lay down. The room went dark, cool, quiet, and then something shifted. Roy's eyes were open. He was sure of that. But his body wasn't responding. That specific paralysis where your consciousness is fully present but your body has been unplugged. He sensed something in the room, close, maybe right next to the bed. He heard something too, a faint brushing sound, like heavy fabric dragging against stone. Slow, rhythmic. This went on for 11 minutes, Roy counted. His body locked in place, that sound continuing, and underneath it, breathing. Not human breathing. Too slow, too deliberate. Then it stopped, his body released. Roy sat up, gasping, drenched in sweat. He checked the time, 8:47 p.m. He'd lost almost 3 hours. He tried to brush it off as tiredness, stress. He showered, changed, went down to dinner. Didn't tell anyone. But that night, the disturbances came back. The stones, the tapping. Roy lay awake, and this time he felt it too. That presence, closer now. Something adjusting its position in the room, something large and deliberate. The air felt different, thicker, colder in spots, even though it was warm October in Varanasi. Over the next day, Roy avoided the room. He spent hours on the ghats, but even there he felt watched. Objects floating by seemed to move with intention. The sound of water against stone steps started to sound like something else. That night, Roy woke up and saw it, at the foot of his bed. A shape. Pale, uneven, like someone had tried to fold cloth into a human outline, but, hadn't quite succeeded. It didn't move, just stood there, swaying slightly, as if waiting. Roy couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Then the room was dark again, empty. In the morning, Roy found the bedsheet twisted tightly around his ankles, deep marks that stayed for days. He was seriously disturbed now, but still practical, still trying to construct explanations. Environmental factor, carbon monoxide, hallucinations. He didn't connect it to the coconut. Why would he? That morning, while organizing his belongings, he moved the coconut to the side table. It sat there while Roy went out. They came back late. Roy retired early. That night, the presence returned fully. This time it moved. Roy felt it before he saw it. The mattress shifted, a weight settling onto the bed beside him. Not human weight, something else. Slowly, deliberately, the presence approached. Roy felt the air move, felt something large getting closer. His body locked again, but this time was different. This time he understood, without knowing how, that whatever had come did so because something was taken, something was noticed, something was brought away. The shape began to resolve, never becoming fully solid, but more defined. Roy could make out the outline, something trying very hard to look human and failing in small, crucial ways. It moved closer to the bed. Roy couldn't move, couldn't scream, could only lie there. And then it was on the bed. Roy woke, or thought he woke, to the mattress shaking. He turned his head to the left, a shape, human-like, the color of black smoke, but dense, almost textured, lying next to him as if staring directly at him, though it had no eyes, just dark spaces where eyes should be. The shape seemed to levitate slightly, hovering above the mattress, and the cold coming off it was intense. Not natural cold, but the kind that hurts, that seeps into your bones. Roy's body was perspiring despite the cold. He tried to move, couldn't, tried to scream. Nothing came out. The shape didn't move, but Roy had the overwhelming sense it was studying him, trying to remember something it had forgotten. Then it moved closer, just slightly. Roy felt something brush against his arm, not skin, not fabric, something in between. That's when Roy's body finally responded. pure animal panic. He rolled off the bed, hit the floor hard, and screamed. His friends heard it. They later said it was a sound they'd never heard before, not quite human. They forced the door open. Took 3 tries because something was holding it shut from inside. They found Roy collapsed on the floor, incoherent, his eyes open but not seeing. He kept pointing at the bed, making sounds that weren't quite words. And then Roy saw it, a gush of wind, the color of black smoke, thick and dense like oil in water. It flowed across the room toward the window, pulling the curtains violently outward as it passed through. The fabric whipped outside, caught in something that wasn't quite wind. His friends saw the curtains move, but nothing else. They didn't understand what they were looking at. Just wind, they'd say later. Just a draft. But Roy saw it, watched it leave. And on the side table, the coconut was spinning, slowly, just slightly, like something invisible was giving it one last turn. Roy understood. Next morning, Roy woke early, before sunrise, before his friends were up. He took the coconut, still intact, no longer spinning, and walked down the steps to the riverfront, alone. The river was quiet at that hour, almost peaceful. A few early pilgrims, some priests preparing for morning prayers, but mostly empty. Roy stood at the edge of the water for a long moment, the coconut in his hands. He looked at it, really looked at it, for the first time since he'd pulled it from the river. The red staining seemed darker now, deeper. He stood there as if deciding something, as if weighing options. Then, without ceremony, without ritual, he threw it into the river Ganges as far as he could. It hit the water with a small splash and disappeared immediately. Didn't float, didn't bob on the surface like it had when he first saw it. Just sank straight down, pulled under by something Roy couldn't see. He watched the spot where it vanished for almost 10 minutes. The river flowed on undisturbed. Roy left Varanasi that morning, first train out. Didn't wait for his friends. Didn't explain anything beyond that he needed to leave. Immediately. He never talked about what happened. His friends tried, but Roy's face would go blank in a way that made them stop asking. But they noticed changes. Roy stopped teaching anthropology, took a job in a different field entirely. Data, numbers, concrete things. He moved cities, cut contact with most people. He never went near rivers after that. Even crossing bridges made him uneasy. He'd take long detours, even if it added hours. He couldn't sleep in silence anymore. Always needed noise, a fan, music, anything to fill the quiet. Lights stayed on, at least one lamp burning, because in silence, he could still hear it. Tap, tap, tap. Stones hitting a wall that wasn't there. Thrown by hands he'd never see. He never figured out the coconut, never wanted to. Some things once taken can't be put back. Once noticed, they never stop noticing you. Because some things, once you bring them home, never really leave. If you felt the temperature drop tonight, if it feels like the dark is listening, then you already know this wasn't just a story. And if you hear a tap, tap, tap on your wall tonight, don't look. Just keep the light burning. We'll be back next week at 3 a.m. Till then, try to get some sleep.